There's a certain extra level of care and respect developers have to put into a project when working on a remake or a remaster. A game that's obviously held its place in history that's become worthy enough of an update years after the fact. While it can be a daunting task to attempt to bring something 20 years old into the limelight nowadays while not losing its original charm and identity, the wait is more often than not well worth it for longtime fans and new players coming into the franchise for the first time. Bloober Team, who have spent their own history carving out a place in the horror genre, were given the task of bringing one of the most well regarded horror titles of the PS1 era into modern times. With a lot of fan doubt leading up to launch, were they able to pull it off? Should Silent Hill 2 have been left in the shadows? Let's take a look with our review. Silent Hill 2 is ultimately where the story and series starts playing on the psyche and mental well being of our player character. In Silent Hill 2, you are controlling James Sunderland, who has arrived in the aforementioned town after receiving a letter from his wife Mary, which is strange because she ultimately fell ill and passed away 3 years ago from an unnamed disease. While exploring the town, James happens upon a wide cast of other characters that all have underlying stories. They kind of let you decide if what you're experiencing ties itself together, or if it's its own separate thing, or if it's actually real to begin with. Characters like Angela, Eddie, and the small 8-year-old orphan Laura all add a certain aspect of uneasiness, but a way to center and ground the player as well in a town that is unnerving at times. One of the best things about Silent Hill is actually how the team manages horror. It's not just jump scares and obscene imagery as you're going through. They take special care in making the normal day to day things that we're used to seem unnatural. You've seen dark, spooky alleys when you add abandoned cars, random hospital beds, children's toys scattered about. It begins to create a story that leaves a lot to interpretation, and at times it almost makes James seem like the thing that doesn't belong. James is the one that's out of place, out of touch. James is the non consistent thing in the town. Silent Hill does such a great job at balancing this aspect, but also visual cues and audio cues. There's a great moment at the beginning that I see a lot of people talk about where you hear a garbage can tip over, some sort of clattering around in an alley, and then it gives you a collectible in the middle of the alley to pick up a photograph or a note, whatever it is. You pick that up, you think you're good, you look up, and then there's something that's crawls out from underneath the fence in front of you and runs down the street, crawls down the street. And it's a visual audio cue back to back in different ways that keeps you on your toes at all times. It's not a game where you're consistently going to be scared, but you will always have an overarching feeling of dread and uneasiness as you progress. Couple wristbands to open up this thing that gives you a key to the next room to solve a puzzle somewhere else. Hey, you need a key to get to this room to drain this pool, to open up a door or a locked box. It's a lot of twists in the puzzle itself where the answer isn't directly presented to you, and often chain links together to other parts of the area you're at or other smaller puzzles around the area itself. The other half, as I mentioned, there is some combat, which is one of the downsides personally for me playing through this for the first time. You have a basic dodge, which you can mostly get in a routine rhythm with most enemies. Hit them a couple times, dodge out of the way. They may come back with a couple hits instead of one. So it's more looking out for tells to negate damage coming at you. But at times, the game is almost throwing too many enemies at you to manage that properly. There is plenty of times where there'd be five, six, seven enemies at once in a room, and it was hard to dodge not having a certain lock on system, not having a way to focus on one or the other, or kind of zone enemies out. And the combat is really an area I wish was modernized bringing this game forward. The graphics are beautiful, it looks great, the fog hanging over the city streets and lights, it hits all the way around. I just wish the combat was also brought up to current times, or even an option to play with an updated combat system to ease in newer, younger players coming in, as it very much feels like PS1 tank control still. While a majority of the game is pretty to look at, is held up to current standards, there are a few other places where I feel the team could have spent more time on, particularly character models. There's a couple scenes with characters like Eddie where there's a scene where he's in a movie theater eating like melted ice cream, and just the animation for it and the ice cream itself, it looks very off, and not in a spooky way. It just looks out of place with the whole idea of what else is going on in the scene. I wish some of the models would have been taken more care of. Some of the animations were a bit cleaner. There's a few parts I had where if you're aiming too close to a window, the animation for holding your gun out in front of you wouldn't actually hit, and you would just be kind of holding it pointed up to your face, shooting bullets blankly without doing anything, which are minor inconveniences. These aren't things that are going to overall take away from your experience, but I wish with how solid the rest of the game is, things like this weren't overlooked. Overall, I was quite surprised with my playthrough of Silent Hill 2 in 2025. My first entry and foray into the series was Silent Hill Homecoming on the Xbox 360, which I know now isn't a lot of people's favorites or necessarily the highlight of the franchise, but coming back to the older titles has been a treat. Puzzles never felt like they were too much or too out of place or too obtuse to figure out yourself. I never felt like I personally made mistakes with how I was progressing or overlooked a key item, a map, a note, whatever it be. Everything was laid out really well and consistently rewarded the player with progression. Silent Hill 2 was surprising to me. I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. I'm happy I finally got around to this 20 years after the fact. But Bloober team, congrats. I'm happy that you guys are able to show off what you're able to do after working on your own titles like Layers of Fear and The Medium, and being given the chance to work with such a well-known, well-regarded IP. I'm excited for the future of Silent Hill. I know we have Silent Hill FE, Silent Hill F, whatever it is, coming down the pipeline still. And it hopefully this marks a turn of time for the franchise. After the past couple releases, stuff like Downpour, the Wii games, I'm hoping this leads to a brighter future and letting Silent Hill become kind of a dominant force in this genre again, where there's so many indie projects kind of doing their own twist. I hope the teams learn from what's going on around them and are able to implement new ideas to keep the series fresh going forward and not fading away into obscurity like so many other things have recently. With that, Silent Hill 2 is getting a strong recommendation from us. We're going to try not doing number reviews per se this year. Strong recommend, though, for horror fans alike, if you like puzzles, if you're a fan of old school Resident Evil, if you just want kind of an old school PS1, PS2 era adventure. Thank you for stopping by the channel and checking out our first sort of new review for the new year as we focus more on video content. If you like this, drop us a follow, like, comment down below if you've had a chance to play Silent Hill 2 yet, whatever it be. You can find us on Twitter, Badlands Backlogs. We stream quite often over on Twitch, also Badlands Backlogs. And be sure to check out our podcast, The Download Queue. We just hit episode 50. We are coming into the new year strong, rebranded. We're on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you can find your other favorite podcasts. The Download Queue is waiting. We're waiting to welcome you into the family. Have a safe, happy new year, and I hope you all get to play some awesome games.